Yo, what is up everyone, back here with another video. In today's video, we are going to be breaking down the biggest VGC tournament that has taken place so far. We're going to be talking all about it, all the different, important stuff that happened in that tournament and what really, it's going to have as an impact on the metagame, right? So what's really important to keep in mind, especially with these tournaments, is just overall how impactful they are for the development of the metagame, right? So pretty much when it comes to tournaments this size online, they do a really good job of giving us an indication of kind of where the meta is headed, right? Now, obviously, if you guys enjoyed the videos, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share the video. I greatly appreciate it. It always helps me out. I love doing these in-depth analysis of, the metagame and stuff, and it's cool to see when you guys are interested in it as well. So make sure to let me know if this is kind of stuff you guys are interested in. If you guys would like to see other kinds of content, make sure to let me know down below. Make sure to check out Patreon if you guys would like to support my content more. And also, make sure to check out coaching if you guys would like to improve with the game. Without further ado, let's get into it. So pretty much this tournament was a 450 plus player tournament. So pretty big. The ramifications of whoever won and the team that won is really important because now we actually have a greater idea of like how the metagame operates and also like what is considered good within the metagame, right? Now, it is worth noting that a lot of these teams are still going to be not fully refined. We are still in the beginning of a metagame that is developing, so stuff will change over time. But there were a couple of different stuff that I felt like was starting to come towards that like developed area where I felt like it was worth talking about, right? So first, what I want to do is I want to go over the statistics, right? So basically, like, I want to talk about the important notes on the statistics, right? And if you guys don't know, I basically like just writing down the notes so you guys can follow along with my thoughts. Helps me structure my thoughts a bit better, so that's why I'm doing it. Essentially, right, the main takeaway was that Goldango, right, is an incredibly strong attacker, special attacker specifically, right? That pairs really well with the offensive dragons, right? That pairs super well with offensive dragons, and Tailwind. And like overall, its most successful, placements were next to Murkrow. So that just shows you that like those two have a lot of synergy together along with Hydreigon and Garchomp, right? So typically the most common or like most consistent core throughout the tournament, core was Goldango plus Hydreigon plus Murkrow plus Garchomp, right? Now, what does this mean overall for the metagame, right? And obviously, like, you can mix and match with, like, the Garchomp, the Hydreigon. Like, it kind of can mix around depending on kind of where the metagame's at. But realistically, the main takeaway was that Goldango plus Murkrow plus Offensive Mon is really good. And we can actually see that core kind of, like, appear multiple times. So, we have Murkrow, Goldango, Hydreigon, Goldango, and we have Garchomp here. Right over here, Goldango, Hydreigon, and then Tailwind. So pretty much Prankster Tailwind, and in the form of Gale Wings. Then you have, again, Hydreigon, Goldango, and Murkrow. Again, Hydreigon, Goldango, Murkrow. You guys get the point, right? So essentially, it's really strong. I'm gonna actually just put this in parentheses since technically it's more of like an addition plus Garchomp, right? Now, what's really important about this is that obviously this is going to be within the span of this tournament, right? Now, the metagame is obviously going to develop to kind of adapt to deal with these teams, but it is worth noting that a lot of defensive teams really underperformed this tournament, besides the ones that had like more creative options. Like basically Intimidators were not super useful in this tournament, right? So Intimidate is basically like near dead at this point. Intimidate is in a pretty rough spot. And I'll kind of go through what I mean by this, like why it's in such a rough spot. Essentially, the main issues that Intimidate has right now is nothing's incredibly like impacted by it, right? So like here, the winner's team, it had a Dragonite, Inner Focus, can't be affected by Intimidate. Clear Amulet, Cerulege, can't be affected by Intimidate, right? Down here, no Pokemon here can be intimidated except for the Dondozo, which orders up anyways. And realistically, Masquerada just crits through. Continue down here. I'm just gonna look at the top four since it's just an example. Clear Amulet, you can intimidate the Breloom, but how much is that really helping you overall? Probably not much. And I'm gonna be talking about an alternative set for Arcanine that I think can give it some viability, by the way. Then we have, River, Clear Amulet, can't be intimidated. And you have, obviously none of these other Pokemon can really be intimidated besides the Dondozo and the Talonflame, but Order Up is really powerful. And then obviously Talonflame doesn't really care too much. So what does this mean, right? Essentially, Intimidate is in a pretty rough spot, meaning Arcanine we'll have to adapt. We'll have to adapt. Right now, how can it potentially adapt from this point in the metagame where it's already in such a rough spot? Because Intimidate's always been its main tool. Well, there's been some other almost, what's it called? Stuff that we've talked about, right? In previous metagames almost. And essentially, or like not previous metagames, but like previous talks about this specific metagame, is that Arcanine can potentially, pivot to a Flash Fire set with Terra Grass. And if you look, it's actually very effective into a lot of this cut, right? So for example, right, you still get access to your Will-O-Wisp, you still get access to your Snarl. Will-O-Wisp is still really good into this team for Dragonite, and Snarl's good into a lot of the special attackers here. Will-O-Wisp is good into the Dondozo, it's good into the Meowscarada, it's good, Snarls into this, right? So Arcanine's utility is still there, right? Like, it still has this ability to actually, like, help your team reduce damage. It's just more so that Intimidate is more of a liability, especially, too, considering that Defiant is running around as well. And that makes it really tough to bring into a lot of situations. Now, that being said, I do genuinely think that this set might have a lot more tournament play. And this set also allows you to wall Torkoal and Lilligant, which I know people have talked about in my previous videos. They're completely walled by this new Arcanine set. So pretty much what I'm going to put here as like the main takeaway is new Arcanine set. Basically, like just saying like, yeah, Arcanine might change. Now, what's going to be really interesting is if people change away from the standard like Arcanine with Intimidate and people start not using Clear Amulet because everyone is stopped running Intimidate. That would be the craziest meta development, right? But at the moment, we don't know that. Assume that people are running Clear Amulet. This makes sense for Arcanine, right? So that's like one of the main things I want to break down, because I still think Arcanine's really good, but comparatively to like how much it was brought, it did underperform in cut, right? Like there was only one in top cut, I believe. One, yeah, there was 2 in top cut, 2. And like it was pretty like mid, I'd say, right? Like it did have Intimidate here, but it wasn't exactly like the best, you know? So what does that mean, right? Now for where we are in the metagame. Basically what I've taken away from this is that there are 2 teams or team compositions to focus on, right? Compositions that got a lot of play, right? So there are basically 3 of them actually. So first off is obviously the Tailwind, Goldango offense spam. Dondozo Tatsugiri. Actually, so a couple of them, right? Armorage, Indeedee F. And you have some like defensive balanced teams. Few and far between. But most keyword, right? Utilized Grimmsnarl for like their defensive purposes, right? And then just gave you better stuff. And I'm also going to put Grimmsnarl and Skeledirge, actually, because Skeledirge actually had a really good performance in this tournament. Like, I mean, I'm saying performance to like where it was relatively. Like over here, Skeledirge ended up getting high placement, right? Which was really good for it. So Skeledirge ended up doing well. Over here, there was another Skeledirge in 5th place. I used Skeledirge as well, and I got I got 15th place. So Skeledirge made some good appearances in Top Cut. Like all things considered, like it was low usage, but it did actually have like really high placements in comparison to the field. And like I'm not sure on the exact statistics on Skeledirge itself, because I didn't really see too many actually. But the few that brought it did like really well with it. So it's obviously worth keeping in mind, right? Now, obviously, I'm probably missing like a couple of different like teams that were outliers, but what I noticed was that there was a distinct lack of Trick Room, right? And I think Trick Room has potential. So like has potential in the metagame, right? In the metagame, it's just not being built correctly, basically. And that's the main thing that really matters, right? Essentially right now, there's no good Trick Room team to counter all these Tailwind teams. But I think as soon as someone figures out a good Trick Room team, it can actually like do a really good job into this metagame, right? Now, obviously, stuff like Flash Fire, Terra Grass, Arcanine does counter some of the Torkoal stuff. So I think they're gonna have to get more creative than just being like Torkoal. You know what I mean? Like you have to go beyond that, And I don't think Lilligant Torkoal is the best way to build around Trick Room because it just seems a little bit more inconsistent. Now, another thing I want to talk about: how did players check Dondozo, right? So how did players check Dondozo and Tatsugiri? Because this is something that everyone talks about, right? Like, oh yeah, how do you beat these guys? So I noticed a couple different ways. Meowscarada crit, right? Meowscarada crit grass move. If they aren't tearing, if they don't have Terra, right? You have Haze on Murkrow. You have your own your own Tatsugiri, right? Tatsugiri slash Dondozo. You have Skeledirge, because Skeledirge is unaware, right? You have something like a Final Gambit, Scarf, Annihilate, plus Chip, right? Because you are going to need a little bit of Chip to kill the Dondozo there, if you are going for Final Gambit stuff with the Scarf, Annihilate. And those are like the main ones that I particularly noticed. I'm sure there are other ones. Obviously, Clear Smog is an option, but doesn't work if it's Steel, right? So Clear Smog only works. Only works if Steel type. So this is like the main takeaways, right? Like essentially what we've learned from this tournament is that Tailwind offense is incredibly popular. There's a distinct lack of Trick Room in the metagame right now. You have, obviously these compositions are getting a lot of play, but they're still not fully developed yet, specifically most of the bottom ones. I think even Tailwind Goldingo offense spam could be developed more. Like, I don't think this team was perfect. It just like it was a player thing, you know? And then, like just having like these ideas in like mind will be like really big going into Victory Road's tournament next weekend. And I think that this will be like stuff to keep in mind going into future tournaments, right? Now, realistically, it is worth noting too that I think some of the underrated Pokemon that like really, also popped up this weekend. So Pokemon that performed better than expected. And it isn't necessarily I thought they were bad. It's just like a lot more top placements of them. Performed better than expected. Skeledirge is one, right? Skeledirge, Meowscarada. You have even Palafin had some high placements, right? There were actually 2 Palafins that made Top Cut, which was crazy. So that's also worth noting. Like, there were the only 2, I think, in Top Cut that had Palafin. Yeah. There were no other Palafin in the top 36. So literally Palafin, both of them in day 2 made cut, which is actually insane. As well too, realistically, I'd say even Mousehold did perform a little bit better than expected. I didn't expect to see so many. And also Talonflame, right? Now, it is worth noting that these aren't necessarily bad Pokemon. It's just that I wasn't necessarily expecting to see them. But overall, that would be my metagame takeaway from this, guys. I think going into next week, we'll see some really interesting meta developments. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed this summary going over stuff. I just want to talk about some trends that I noticed and things I think could potentially be strong going into metagame, specifically Trick Room. If Trick Room's developed well, I think it could be really strong. And also just some Pokemon choices that, are pretty good and like what players were doing into different teams. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this kind of review. Make sure to let me know if you guys would like to see more videos like this in the future. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel, and I'll see you guys next video. Peace.